Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Doug Sandler, along with John Browning. Welcome to the show. John, sunny Florida. It's getting to be springtime now. What's going on, my friend?
I know. It's really nice down here. It's 70 degrees and sunny, and hopefully it stays that way. It's been a lot of rain this past year. You guys had rain,
Oh my
which is
gosh,
kind of unusual.
so much rain in Southern California, but we are. I think I'm looking at the forecast out for the next 2 weeks, and it looks like we are done with winter. So we will not see another drop of rain probably until November now.
there you go. There you go. We will, because we get spring and summertime. It rains every day down here,
Oh
which is okay
gosh.
because it's only like 10 minutes
Yeah.
usually.
If
So
we get rain, our next season is mudslide season. That's what
yes,
we
yeah,
have.
that's a problem. That's a problem. That kind of gets to the topic today. It's like it's not just the rain that you see; it's what happens underneath, right? So
Oh, I love that. See that you make good say. You'd be really good in radio, John. You should try it.
I can
All right.
segue right in there.
So let's talk about that. This is a really good starting point. You sent me some great notes for today's few episodes that we're going to record. We do this thing called batch recording for those in our building your life podcast audience. We do a very cool thing. John and I usually get together once or twice a month. We knock out a few episodes at a time. And John sent me a bunch of subjects that he wants to talk about. And I like this first one because you just started to get into it. So tell our audience what we're going to talk about today.
Well, it's this idea, right, of one-dimensional thinking, two-dimensional thinking, three, four, and five-dimensional thinking. And you hear about this a lot in the tech space, right? Because when you get into things like quantum computing, which is a real thing, and quantum computers now exist, it kind of blows your mind. Like it's a little bit beyond my comprehension. Okay, maybe a whole lot beyond my comprehension,
Way outside of my pay grade.
right? And you can get that way. You can be very surfacey with almost any topic and feel like you know it, and feel like, oh yeah, I got that. I'm good. So and that happens with financial planning and kind of planning for your retirement. And it's a really easy trap to fall into because you go to work and you got maybe a 401k, and I'm saving money in my 401k. I'm good.
Well, people get caught in the rut. I think they get caught in the rut of this is what I heard that I needed to do, and they kind of set it and forget it. And I'm not saying that there's a lot wrong with that, but there's not much more than the one dimension of the set. They don't really go beyond that. So let's expand out further. As a friend of mine who's also a podcaster said, let's double click on that. So let's double click on this
Just
just a
double
little bit.
click on that.
I want to
So
double
you
click. Yeah,
double click and dig a little deeper, right?
right.
So that idea, and unfortunately I will say there are a lot, because I see the results of it. A lot of financial advisors that unfortunately are kind of one-dimensional. There's stocks that you invest in, and there's bonds that
Yep.
you invest in, and that's it.
I
That's what
like
I call one-dimensional
I
thinking.
like both kinds of music, country and western, right?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. So how do you get outside of that mindset? Because I'm sure there's people in our audience that feel like, well, I'm not a one-dimensional thinker, but they probably still are in that one-dimensional mode. So what does that look like? How do you get out of it?
Yeah, I think you begin to, so that's like kind of the world is flat, right? And then you begin to realize, you do maybe some more research, or you listen to the Building Your Life podcast, and you realize that it's more, just a little bit more difficult than that. And like two-dimensional thinking goes into, okay, the world is not flat, and everything doesn't react the same way to the same inputs. So we've gotten to the point where the world is round, and you kind of realize that, and there's something besides stocks, and there's something besides bonds, and there's maybe different types of accounts that you can set up that might be beneficial for you. And that's kind of that two-dimensional thinking. But most people, I'm going to say in the high 80% of the people who are very good at their jobs, good lawyers, plumbers, electricians, teachers, whatever, that is pretty much as far
Hmm.
as they go. They get to two-dimensional thinking, and that's great. That's wonderful. But getting into that three and four-dimensional thinking, that not only is the world round, there's actually a lot of things that impact weather systems in one part of the world impact other weather systems and things like that, right? There's a lot of other things involved, and it begins to get not just complicated, where there's that very complicated, but it gets complex, right? We've talked about that before,
Yep.
where it's not just, I know that there's like, we're engine guys to some extent, right? You more than me, but there's spark and there's fuel, right? There's some other things in there, but they all kind of go together
Yep.
roughly the same way. There is an answer to that math problem. But that idea of 3 and 4 dimensional thinking in your financial planning is where you can really make hundreds of thousands, and that's not an exaggeration, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of a difference to your future by digging into things like how does how might I move things around, still save for retirement, but use different accounts? How might I look at the tax code a little bit differently and see that there are ways to reduce taxes, but maybe not eliminate taxes? So that's
Hmm.
another thing. People think I want to just eliminate all tax and get to a 0% tax bracket. That may not be right for you for several different reasons.
Could it also be related to diversification too, the different things that you are investing in, real estate as opposed to the stock market, as opposed to an IRA, as opposed to, whatever? Is diversification a part of the equation also?
It's absolutely a part of the diversification, and it's most of the folks that I know that are real estate agents, I'll pick on them. They tend to think that the world is one dimensional, but they think of it as it's real estate. It's real estate and cash, right? And
Yep.
that's it.
Yep. Well, everybody's
And
got their, I'm a podcast producer, so everything, I'm a podcasting hammer, everything looks like a podcasting nail to me. So of course,
yeah,
it's real estate people are in the game of real estate, and they're just looking at how do I flip properties, or how do I buy more out of state properties, or how do I get more rental income, or how do I buy commercial property? It's all about real estate.
right. And how do you guard? And some of them will argue with me till they're blue in the face, and I won't ever win that argument, right? That real estate always goes up. They
Well,
possibly forgot about 2007 and 2008 and all that, but
hmm.
um, it certainly seems that way. And I think over the course of any, kind of like equities, over the course of any 5-10 year period, most places, not all, go up in value in real estate. But is that the right thing for you in just real estate? How does that impact your taxes? I mean, that's there's all sorts of different issues with real estate. You can do 1035 exchanges, but you can only do them so you got to do them in a certain way. You miss one of those windows, suddenly you have this big tax bill and everything goes haywire. And that's another part of sort of that third and fourth dimensional thinking, right? Is okay, I can have all these assets and I can have them well diversified, but if God forbid there's a lawsuit for whatever reason, right? Or anything could happen, right? How do you get to this concept of controlling everything but owning nothing?
Hmm.
That idea, right? And there's a certain former president that could tell you all about that, right? But we won't get into that topic today. But
There's
you
more of
can,
a disproportionate value of things stated.
or that too, right?
How do I own everything, but actually it's worth less than I thought? No, I'm not going to get into it either. Let's stay out of politics right here. We'll not get into that.
Exactly. Yeah, but I mean that's another part of thinking down to that next sort of dimension. And then you get into worldwide events, right? And so, wow, you know what? We might really be able to increase our returns if we were exposed to China, but given the fact that the Chinese politics are the way they are, how do we not expose ourselves to the actual Chinese market, but still benefit from some of the stimulus programs that they have in there?
Hmm.
And that gets down, and I mean, you're into the fifth dimension at that point, and that's where I play. because I love to put those puzzle pieces together, and the puzzle pieces are always moving and morphing.
So, and it sounds like most of that is dictated by the personality and the risk tolerance of each individual person. Like that fifth dimension, it sounds like you've got to be clicking on all cylinders. Well, you can't have a set it and forget it mentality if you're in that fifth dimension because there's so many variables I would think that are involved with making those decisions.
That's right. That is exactly correct, and that's where it becomes complex, not complicated. And I don't want to tell someone who's just starting out that they have to be there, right? I mean, having an S&P 500 fund as you're just starting out in your 401k, and that's fine. But when you get to where you have significant assets and maybe you're approaching your 5 or 10 years out from retirement, the amount of difference that you can make in terms of the money that you keep and are able to use for you and not send to Uncle Sam is pretty mind-boggling. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for most people who have planned and saved well, as
Yes.
far as how much they can, again, keep for themselves, use for themselves and their family. And then, of course, that next sort of fifth dimension is too, what happens when I pass,
Okay,
right?
a lot to digest here, and I think that
Yeah,
without going into too much more detail, because we are a short podcast episode, we want
that's
to
right.
give you enough information just so you guys can see that there is a huge variance between a one-dimensional thinking investor versus a fifth-dimensional thinking investor. And there's a whole bunch of steps in between. You don't have to take the big leap from being a one-dimensional 401k person to, investing in Chinese stimulus packages overseas. There's a lot of stuff in there, in between there. And the best way for you to take that easy step is just to reach out to John and let's make that the first step that you take. You'll have a conversation. You'll start discussing at least a preliminary strategy for what needs to be done in order to take you from one to five, fifth dimension, and get in touch with John. Best way to do that, text the word life, LIFE, text that to 321-421-5213. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes for that. And you'll be able to get directly onto John's calendar. Anything? How is your calendar? Are you? I don't. How far out are you booking right now? Like, if somebody said, I want to be able to book this in the next week, are you there, or are you further out than that right now?
Uh, like this week is shot, right? But next week I have some openings, and then the week after that it opens up a little bit more. But it's pretty much it's a solid week, and then there's a few spots, and then there's a week where there's so it's
Got it.
almost 2 weeks out.
Okay, so
Um,
don't wait. If you want to get on John's calendar, the idea behind it is it's going to take a moment just to get to his schedule so that you can set it up. So if you don't want to do it tomorrow, you can't do it today. Book it. You can't book it today for tomorrow. So just take your time, but get on his schedule. Text the word life again to 321-421-5213. Am I missing anything about I thought this was the age of Aquarius. I think thought we were doing some, I saw
yeah, we should play that music for this one.
that dimension. That would require a whole different editing level.
Right, right. We try and keep things as simple as possible, but no simpler, right?
We really do. All right, John. Well, thanks for chatting another week. Thanks for being here and sharing your expertise with our audience today.
All right, thanks. We'll see you next week.